Hollywood stars like Jeff Bridges and top Democrats like Pete Buttigieg, cabinet member, and they've regained their access now. They were pushed off of X, briefly suspended after raking in more than $4 million for the VP's campaign in a Zoom call on Monday night in which some members presented an alternative to MAGA supporting men. Watch.
The reason that we are doing this is because we've just, the left that has been ceding white men to the MAGA right for way, way too long. We know that the silent majority of white men aren't actually MAGA supporters. Masculinity as a trope has been co-opted by the MAGA right into something that feeds into and exacerbates the loneliness epidemic.
Fascinating. Okay, former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy joins me now, and I want to get his thoughts on this and also some of what we heard at the NABJ in just a moment. But, your reaction to this White Dudes for Harris and how they're trying to be a counter for what they say was this, sort of masculine approach from the RNC and the way they discuss MAGA dudes.
Well, the reality is this is a party, Martha, that is obsessed with identity politics. I think it's disgusting and anti-American. But the idea of segregating different groups based on your race or your ethnicity or your gender, I just think is un-American at its core. It is consistent with the basis for selecting Kamala Harris. Remember, many of the prominent Democrats at the time she was selected as the vice president for Joe Biden specifically referenced her own race and gender, which I think made no sense at the time. But I will give them points for consistency. Say one thing, this is a party obsessed with identity politics, and they're certainly running their campaign accordingly, even though I think it's going to backfire in the end.
Yeah, you know what? I think you make a great point, because I looked back at articles from 2020 and President Biden said, then candidate, he said that he was looking at like 10 women for vice president. And he said 4 of those women are black women. And that was given, sort of a lot of attention as a good thing. And I couldn't help but think, if you're in that subset and you're a woman, you're thinking, OK, so now he's already only considering me because I'm a woman instead of letting me run against everybody in the entire pool. And if you're a black woman, he's making that group even smaller that you're competing against. And I think that a lot of people agree with you on that diminishes being chosen in that employment contest.
I think it does, absolutely. And I think it's denigrating, frankly, to women and to black Americans across this country to suggest that you need a special type of quota system. I remember watching those Democratic primaries. These are exact quotes from other prominent Democrats, senators and others, who famously said, it's time for a woman of color on that ticket. I don't think the race or gender of a person should matter one way or another. And I do think, Marcia, this is also a moment for us to go to actually standing for our own values as a party. I do believe that we need a bit of a reset in this campaign. If we're being honest and being clear-eyed, I think the reality is Kamala's new de facto nomination, coronation, whatever you want to call it, after the Republican convention was a bit of a shock that caught a lot of Republicans by blindside. And the reality is we now have to take a big step back and say, we're going to offer our own vision of what we stand for. I think the attacks on Kamala alone are not going to be enough. We're already seeing that over the last week. I think we have to stand for our own alternative vision that we believe in merit. The reason that we're critical of identity politics isn't because we're against the Democrats. It's because we stand for meritocracy, and that's part of who we are as Americans. And so as much as I'm critical of the Democrats, I also think now is a moment for a wake-up call on our own side. We need to use this as a chance to reset and level set and focus on our own vision for the future of this country. And the more we do that, the more successful we're going to be. Frankly, the less we do it, the more risk I do see heading into November.
All right, let me ask you a little bit about this rather heated National Association of Black Journalists interview with former President Trump and current GOP candidate, because he's going to get a lot of attention for saying this, and I want to hear what you think about it. He basically, and I know you didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, so let's play the sound, and then we'll get your reaction.
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't.
All right. Vivek, I want to give you a chance to react to that. No doubt it's going to get attention. It already is.
Yeah, so look, on a very personal level, my parents were immigrants to this country, legal immigrants from southern India. Very same part of India that her mother also immigrated from. I think it's a hard fact, Martha, it's just a fact, whether you like it or not, that many Indian Americans in the United States are indeed somewhat offended by the way Kamala has suddenly cast aside the Indian American side of her identity. She leaned into it when she ran for office in California. Big Asian American and Indian American population. So she wore that when it was convenient. She's wearing a different identity now when it's politically convenient on a national stage. Personally, I don't think we should be relying on these ethnic identities at all. We're actually American. And the problem is when you're Kamala Harris and you actually do lean into your identity politics, then you open the door to that type of criticism. But if you ask me, that shouldn't be how this election is decided one way or another. It should be decided on our own identity as Americans and what our vision is for the future of the country. And the number one thing missing in Kamala Harris's candidacy is that she lacks that vision for the country. That's what we got to focus on.
Okay. Very interesting to hear from you and to hear your call for a reset in your party.